I don't know who needs to hear this, but what I came across really shook me deeply, and I felt like it's something that I should share it with you, my beautiful family. So grab your seat, hit that like button, and let's roll the clip.
The title of this book is How to Make a Negro Christian. Now, after having read this book, I realized that it doesn't talk really about, it talks a little bit about how to make a black man a Christian. It talks more about why is it important to make a black man a Christian. And very few books have broken my heart like this book. I will not lie to you. Very few books have broken my heart like this. Because this book, firstly, brought to my attention that we did not choose to be Christians. Christianity was imposed on us with the most vile, violent, inhuman methods that you can perceive. This book also clearly identifies the fact that for black people to become Christians, it was more for the advantage of white people than it was for the advantage of black people. It served the best interest of white people for me to be a Christian than it does serve my interest. Another point, it talks about this guy called Dr. Reverend Charles Colcock Jones. Dr. Charles Colcock Jones was a slave master who had plantations, about 6-7 plantations. And in each plantation, there were slaves. There were black slaves. Now, in the North, black people were not even allowed to worship God. Black people were not even allowed to be exposed to the message of Christianity, because these were savages. These were animals. Now, this Colcock Jones was one of the first people who gathered the people in his plantations, black people, and started sharing the message of Jesus. During that time, there were a lot of slave insurrections, meaning black people who were slaves would wake up in the middle of the night, kill all the white people that were in the plantations, burn their houses, and run away. They knew they would be caught, they would be killed. It didn't matter to them. There are more than 400 slave insurrections that are recorded in America. This is the guy who started saying, let me gather black people and let me teach them about Jesus. Let me teach them about the gospel. And he realized this. The more he taught them the Bible, the more he taught them the Bible, the more tamed the more docile, the more diluted they became. The more he taught them the gospel, the more humble they became. The more he taught them the gospel, the more a threat, the less a threat they became to white people. And he's one of the few people who never had a slave insurrection in his plantations. Now he took it upon himself to teach white people and said, do not be afraid to teach black people the message of Christianity, because it makes them less militant, it makes them docile, it makes them humble, it makes them controllable.
Welcome back from that episode. I know you expected more, but I'm really sorry. That's the only part that I could gather for you. But with that small information, I believe that you were able to find more information using that. And also, the baby woke up and I couldn't do the reaction on the camera. Anyway, back to the video. When I came across this video, I was so curious to know more about it. And the way he broke it down, I could feel his pain just through his voice. He said he has never read a book that broke him the way this one did. And immediately, something in me connected, not just emotionally, but historically, spiritually, and personally. I haven't even read the whole book yet, but from what he said and from what I know deep down, it's already making sense, because the moment I heard the title, my mind went straight back to the stories my grandmother used to tell me when I was growing up. See, as a child, I was always curious about history. I wanted to know what life looked like before I was born, what really happened, not the polished stories written in school textbooks. And my grandmother was my greatest historian. She gave me the kind of truth that official books will never print. She used to tell me that when missionaries came to Africa, they didn't just come to save souls. Yes, some had good intentions, but many of them were part of a bigger plan. Their mission was to enter the hearts before the colonizers entered the land, to soften the people, to make us more trusting, less suspicious, less hostile, and more obedient. She also said Africans were not stupid. Like, we had our own gods, our own spiritual systems, our own ways of believing, and we defended our lands fearlessly. So if strangers could show up, especially looking strange or coming with strange motives, Africans were not just going to open their arms and say welcome. They would protect themselves. So what did the missionaries do? They came with the cross first, and then the flag followed later. They started by learning the people, studying the land, mapping out the villages, identifying where the minerals were, where the soil was rich, who the leaders were, which tribes were resistant, and which ones could be manipulated. They were not just preaching, they were surveying. Even the schools that they built it with motives to help communicate between them and the locals. And when I heard about this book, How to Make a Negro Christian, it hit me that the exact same strategy they used during slavery in the Americas is the same one they used in Africa. Different location, but same plans. The man in this video said something powerful, that Christianity at that time was not being preached just to convert people to God, but to control them, to make them docile, to stop them from questioning what was being done to them, to redirect their anger, their resistance, their courage into silence, submission, and hope for the afterlife instead of justice in this life. I know some people won't like to hear this, because the moment you say something like this, they think you are attacking Christianity itself. But no, what I'm saying and what that book exposes is how religion was used as a tool, a weapon, a strategy, not for salvation but for domination. During slavery, they did not want black people to rebel. They did not want them to question why they were being beaten, raped, chained, or killed. So what did they do? They gave them selective Bible. They gave them selective Bible verses, not the whole Bible, not the parts about freedom, rebellion, justice, or Moses leading people out of oppression. No. They preach obedience. They preach serve your master. They preach blessed are the meek. They preach turn the other cheek. They trained the enslaved people to believe that their suffering was holy, that their reward was in heaven, and that questioning the oppressor was questioning God. Now, does that not line up exactly with what my grandmother told me? Because in Africa, before the colonizers came with guns, the missionaries came with the gospel. And they started by making our gods look demonic. They changed our perception of self. They taught people to abandon their names, their rituals, their culture, and their pride. They took away confidence and replaced it with dependency. And let me tell you something. When you remove a people's spiritual backbone, you don't need chains to control them anymore. They will police themselves. So when I heard that man reacting to that book, I felt his pain, because I know that kind of pain. You don't just read his story. You feel it in your bones. You realize that everything you grew up hearing from the elders was not superstition or imagination. It was lived experience. And this is why a lot of people today only know the whitewashed version of history. They were never told what happened behind the scenes. They were never told that some missionaries were literally scouting for colonizers. They were never told that maps of Africa were drawn long before guns arrived. They were never told that religion was used strategically, not spiritually. And you can argue all you want, but facts are facts. Why was it that after the Bible came, the flag and the military followed? Why is it that the people who were converted were the first to lose their land, their names, their language, their gods, and their power? That's something you should question yourself with. So for me, hearing about that book did not shock me. It only confirmed me. It connected back to everything my grandmother used to say. She might not have read that book, but she lived a version of it. Her parents and her grandparents saw it happening firsthand. And that's why I say, when real history is passed down orally, it carries a fire that no textbook can erase. I'm going to look for that book and read it myself. If you have any source, like where I can find that book, kindly leave it for me in the comments. But even before I open it, I already understand why it broke that man, because it's not just information, it's evidence of how the African spirit was disarmed before the land was taken, evidence of how slaves were conditioned to accept bondage as God's will. evidence of how silence was packaged as holiness. And the saddest part is that many people today still don't see it. They defend the strategy without even knowing they are defending the system behind it. But at least now the pieces are connecting, and I'm going to keep talking about this. It's not spreading hate, but to restore the truth. And of course, this video is only for educational purposes. And do not forget that our elders knew. They carried the memory with them, and I refuse to let that memory die. Will you let it die? Let's talk in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe, share it, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.